Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. If you want to learn how to support this channel and its mission to normalize atheism and deconversion, stay tuned to the end of the video. This video is a part of a series entitled Questionable Witnesses, An Atheist Teaches Life of Christ. Today we'll be looking at the Christmas story and asking the important question, did angels really appear to shepherds? I'm teaching the Gospels much like I did many times in my churches as a pastor over the years, but now I'm teaching it as an atheist. The whole issue of this series has been to get to how many witnesses do the gospel accounts actually have, and are they credible? The Bible's admonition of 2 or 3 witnesses is our first test. The next test is modern scholarship, which is a little bit more rigorous as to providing truth or falsehood of claims and other criteria. Plus, I want to make some remarks about the story that I think are pertinent. I also want to make some deconversion notes. To summarize this part of the Christmas story, which is found in Luke 2, 8 through 20, the story starts with some shepherds that are keeping watch on their flocks at night, and suddenly the angel of the Lord appears to them and gives them an announcement of Jesus' birth and how to find him. Then a whole company of angels appears and gives God the glory and then disappears. The shepherds go to Bethlehem and find the child as they were instructed to do, and the shepherds tell everyone their story. Then everyone marvels at what the child will be, but Mary just keeps these things to herself, and then the shepherds go back to their jobs. Now, let's start with our biblical criteria of 2 or 3 witnesses. Once again, if we look at the Gospels, we only have one witness, and that's the writer of Luke. As this story doesn't appear in any of the other Gospels, the writer himself is still anonymous, which is a big problem when you're trying to authenticate the historicity of what a writer says. And he doesn't tell where he got the story either, what is his source for this story, because he would have been writing many later. So a lot of people theorize because of the line about Mary, it's Mary, but one can write the thoughts and ideas of somebody that might have been just a tradition in the church itself, that this was Mary's thoughts, that she was always somebody that pondered things and did things in that manner. So it doesn't necessarily prove anything about them. The story has a bunch of shepherds that could be witnesses to the story. They would definitely have more than 2 or 3, which would meet the biblical criteria, but we don't have their names, and they leave no other mark on history other than this account in Luke. Because they are not named, they are left to the realm of being possibly a bunch of made-up NPCs for the story. But they can't be historically verified, even by a biblical standard. Now, the angels would be helpful as witnesses, but they seem to be the kind of creatures that are apparently too shy to appear in any other places that would have witnesses that would be credible, that would write them down, nor do they seem to be able to be called for testimony themselves. So when it comes to our biblical criteria, the biblical account fails on multiple lines. We only have one gospel writing it. He doesn't tell us who his witnesses or stories are, where they came from. We also have a bunch of shepherds that aren't named, never really give their testimony in a way that we could authenticate it. This could just be a story that's made up. And so it's hearsay. We just don't have anything else. There's a lot of conjecture and speculation as to where the story came from, such as Mary, but once again, that's conjecture and speculation. So we have to move on to modern historical scholarship, and we have actually more problems here. Once again, the only place that this story appears or even mentioned at the time is here in Luke. Angels have never been verified to exist. That's a big scientific problem, by the way. And there's no record of some Bethlehemite or a bunch of shepherds coming into town doing this. It's strange that these events, even in the ancient world, never occur where there are ancient historians around or other people that would write stuff down to verify their existence. It's always to some group of people in the middle of nowhere where nobody can verify that it happened. There really isn't much to talk about when it comes to modern scholarship, because the only thing modern scholarship would be interested in is, do angels actually exist, and can they be scientifically verified to exist? And 2, from a history point of view, there's really nothing to talk about other than the writer of Luke writes this story, but he's anonymous and we don't know where he got his account from. So from a historical point of view, questionable, very questionable. This leads to other pertinent issues, such as the existence of angels. As they very much appear in the Bible, there's definitely a backdrop of the book of Enoch to every biblical account about angels. They never seem to appear in places where they can be verified to exist. The existence of angels is something that has never been verified, really, despite the huge number of stories of their existence. It always to some individual or small group that they appear, And then always to people whom no, there's never somebody around with a recording device or a video to take a video or to take a picture or anything like that. And in the case of this story, that stuff hasn't even been invented, which seems like a bad move on God's part. If he really wanted to verify the stories about his son, he could have just had video equipment invented before it happened. But nope, we're going to deal with some ancient testimony that can't even be verified, even by the standards of their own time. Also get the accusation, a lot of us critics of the Bible get this accusation that, well, the shepherds wouldn't have just made up the story. I would have to say at that point that people are quite imaginative, even in groups, and they can make up a story. It is very possible and now documented how groups of people can collectively create a story that they all believe and that they work on it together so much to get their story straight. So I have to ask people when they make that statement that shepherds wouldn't have made up the story, have you been around being a human being very long? What the angels say is also confusing as another side note to the story. It's not so much that God gets the glory for it and the angels give him glory. That's not the part that bothers me. It's the fact that there's an open statement here that God is pleased with mankind. That seems strange given that so many make out in this time of year that this baby is predestined to die for the sins of the world. And I thought it was the sinfulness of mankind that made God hate humanity. It's one of those mixed messages about God's viewpoint towards humanity that appears here, on the one hand, being very positive, and yet the whole story, when you read it out, is Jesus dying for the sins of mankind. And that becomes a real problem, okay? Because which is it? Is God pleased with us? Does he hate us? What is it? Is his wrath poured out against us on all mankind? Or is it he loves us all? It's this constant duality in God's opinion about mankind and humanity that is made worse in this story, because we have a clear statement from supposed angelic beings that God is pleased with mankind, and that's why he's doing this. Well, I thought the whole point was mankind was sinful and the wrath of God was being poured out on them. It's a lot of these theological dualities that led to my deconversion, because the Bible isn't very clear all the time about what God's attitude about people is. On the one hand, he hates sin and he hates the sinner. Sorry, there's none of this love the sinner, hate the sin in God. He will straight up kill people if he feels they're sinning too much. On the flip side, you have statements like this, and we've already seen this where Zacharias and his wife Elizabeth are righteous enough to be noted as being righteous, and yet at the same time, there's none righteous, no, not one. It's these contradictions that appear about human nature, and the angels say something here that really bring that out. It's one of the biggest problems with the story, because does God hate us and need to redeem us? Or are we loved by him and we just have a little bit of a hard time and he needs to get us over it? It's all over the place. And this is one of the things that began to bother me as I moved into my deconversion state. And I started deconverting and deconstructing from all this stuff. One of the things that comes up in deconstruction is, and with people that I deal with on this channel that want to criticize me for being critical of them, is when we deconstruct about various characters in mythology. For instance, if I tell the story about how the Vikings believed that the Valkyrie come after a battle and pick up the fallen warriors that they deem brave enough for Valhalla, the average Christian is going to dismiss the existence of Valkyrie as a mythological element. They'll also do things with such messenger gods such as Hermes or Mercury, many other types of messengers that different deities use. Like Odin's wolves and ravens, all these kind of different creatures that appear around these gods. You will see an average Christian, well, I don't believe in any of that. That's just myth and that's just nonsense. They'll literally say that. And I said, well, based on what criteria do you dismiss them? And this became a real deconversion issue for me, because the moment I started creating criteria for dismissing other creatures, other gods, other things in the stories that I considered mythology, I suddenly realized those same criteria, if used on, say, angels in this story, would do the same thing. it would dismiss them. The criteria gets rid of them. They're not verified historically. They always seem to be, creations of human imagination. I don't see anything like that in real reality today. Over and over, what you begin to realize when you start putting criteria on other religions and why you dismiss them, and then all of a sudden you start looking at your own and going, oh, wait a minute, okay, maybe maybe I got some elements in this one too, my own. And it was comparative religions and studying comparative religions that made me realize that angels and Valkyrie and other made up entities all the way through, including gods having their own messenger gods like Mercury or Hermes, you suddenly begin to realize that there's a whole element of this creating some sort of servant or god equal to the gods that is the messenger type vehicle to convey the divine. And the angels are being used in this story in a very similar way to all of them. And if I dismiss all of them because they can't be verified to exist, on what basis as a Christian did I have to keep my angels? And I suddenly realized that angels are a mythological creature just up there with leprechauns and Valkyrie and all the rest of it. There's just this, you suddenly realize that you've been special pleading your belief system around these angels and other things that you believe. So it's one of the things that led to my deconversion was actually doing comparative religion studies and realizing how much Christianity is very similar to a lot of them. And so from a deconversion standpoint, this is one of the things that I think this story illustrates this, where you begin to realize that the nonsense of other religions is also in your own religion, and you begin to deconstruct that and realize, okay, if I have no reason then to dismiss my own angels, I really don't have a reason to dismiss some of these other creatures and mythologies, these other messenger gods, whatever. And so that kind of gets you over it. I think also in deconversion from the entire Christmas story, which this part and the last part dealt with, I think the issue of holidays always comes up to somebody who's deconverted. I used to get comments, still every once in a while do, about how you're an atheist, why are you celebrating my holiday? The problem is when you look at this time of year from the winter solstice to the end of the year, whose holiday is it really? Okay, I don't think anybody owns it. Christians like to have their persecution narrative, but I can't recall any of these people saying, I'm going to say Merry Christmas no matter what people say. I don't remember anybody asking you to not do it. Okay, I don't remember any law being passed saying you can't say Merry Christmas in the United States. I don't remember any of this. And it's like they make up the persecution narrative about Christmas, and it really isn't. There really isn't anything there. And once I realized that too, it's like, we really like, when I was still a Christian, I was like, we really like this persecution martyr narrative, don't we? It makes everybody pity us, and maybe we need to drop that and start being a little bit more bold and more active. And so, but once I started getting over the Christmas holiday, it was more of a matter of how am I going to deal with this with my family? There's all kinds of different religions and different people groups, including atheists, celebrating the end of the year, the winter solstice, festus, all of that stuff. And so I think when it's something like holidays, it's important to have alternatives, and it's important to realize that there are some benefits to celebrating certain holidays like Christmas, like gathering with your family, keeping connected, giving gifts to each other, I think is a very positive human thing. And so I think I can keep all that stuff in this time of year. It's just, as a person who works retail, it gets old to me very quick, because the one thing, there isn't a lot of is peace on earth, goodwill to men at this time of year. Just work in retail a year and you'll know what I mean. Everybody's trying to get the gift. I mean, today I'm recording this on the 26th of December, 2024, a little bit later than I had hoped, but I just spent last night when we opened the store this morning at 6 o'clock after being closed for a day, amazed at how many people just are coming in the door to buy 50% off stuff and 25% off stuff so they can decorate for next year. And it's just amazing to me the amount of money that goes into this holiday that could go into something much more productive. And to me, this is why I tell you at the end of every video, don't waste your money on religion, because there's that element. But at the same time, I can see celebrations as being necessary for humans to do things. But it's the commercialized nature of it. It's the whole over the top. It's the whole, over the top lights, all that extravagant. And I guess I just don't have time for that part of it anymore as a minimalist. And so it's just like I don't decorate myself. I mean, I'm here by myself. So about the only thing I do is, take the, Christmas pictures of the kids that my kids send me, of the grandkids, and slap them on my refrigerator. And they're usually Christmas oriented. And that's my only decoration. I'm good with that. But to each their own as they deconvert from this holiday. It's like I say, you have to decide, do you want to be right about the story, or do you want to have the relationships with your family? Those are the decisions you kind of make when you're deconverting. But that's it for this one. I'd be interested to what you have to say in the comments. To kind of summarize, there just is no evidence for angels. The account, once again, is written by an anonymous author who doesn't tell us who his source is. We have the same hearsay evidence that we've had so far throughout the entirety of this series, where nothing can be verified, nothing can be historically measured, anything like that. And today we have the additional problem of angels being a mythological creature that have never been verified to exist, any more than Valkyrie or fauns or leprechauns. So we're still left in the realm of imagination rather than history. So there's that, and so I'd be interested in hearing your comments on that. And if you want to support the channel, it's mission to normalize atheism and deconversion. There's lots of ways to do that. There's, of course, Super Chat, Super Thanks, PayPal link is in the description. You can also do the most significant thing to me from my perspective, which is become a member of the channel and support my work to continue to normalize atheism and deconversion. You kind of see an example of this where I'm kind of demythologizing and stripping the spiritual away from a lot of people's sacred text here, particularly the Bible for Christians, and getting rid of, this is a historical story, highly unlikely. Seems almost like it's written after the fact. Once certain other theology develop about Jesus, then they have to add the birth narrative, and that's what it feels like to me. So that's kind of where it is. So there you have it. That's how I do that. So supporting this by becoming a citizen of the Rabyd Nation is just always greatly appreciated. And once again, special thanks to all my citizens. You guys are awesome. I appreciate every single one of you. You guys are great. You really do help me out. So thank you very much. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So you want to take all your time, money, and opportunities and spend them on yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith. That's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I will catch you next time.